It caught me sometimes that this was okay. Just this. That simple beauty was still bearable, barely, and that if I lived moment to moment, garden to stove, to the simple act of podcasting, I could have peace.
That's what we're chasing here on Science Fiction Book Club.
That's right.
Peace.
Week after week.
Welcome to Science Fiction Book Club, a podcast for bookworms and stargazers. In every episode, we dive into the pages of our favorite science fiction novels to break down the big ideas, ask the nerdy questions, and maybe learn a bit about ourselves along the way. My name's Abu, and I'm joined by my fellow last survivor on the planet, Obssa.
That's right. I'm excited for this one.
Which one of us, okay, before we get into it, which one of us is the gun-toting maniac?
That's what I was thinking about. Which one of us is just strapped up, can no scope, take out opponents,
right.
Come in for our podcast?
Which one of us, if we had to kill, would kill? You know,
right.
I think we're both too soft-hearted for that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Maybe paintballs, maybe like splatter them. You know, some warning shots.
BB guns,
potentially. Wouldn't want to hurt them. We don't want to hurt them.
No. I mean, BB guns can hurt.
BB guns can hurt. Maybe.
I don't think, unfortunately, unlike Higgs and Bangley, we don't have the juice.
Nah.
We wouldn't make it very far in the post-apocalypse.
I think we're prey in the apocalypse, not
predators. Yeah. Very true, very true. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we dive into today's book, as the title states, we are getting into the first half of The Dog Stars by Peter Heller, chapters 1 through 6 today. Before we dive in, let's take care of some housekeeping. And folks, that was your spoiler warning right there. Before you continue listening, make sure that you have read at least the first half of the book. Again, that's chapters 1 through 6, which we're covering today.
And as always, we encourage you to read along with us, share your thoughts, email us at sci-fi-bookclubpod@loreparty.com. Please join the Patreon at patreon.com/sci-fi-bookclubpod. We post free reading guides, discussion questions, bonus clips, bloopers, all that great stuff on that Patreon. And it's also, of course, where you can find our Discord, where we like to keep these nerdy sci-fi discussions going with fellow readers in our community, just like you.
That's right. And as always, all of the important links are down below in the show notes, so check that out after you're done listening. Here's the game plan for today. The same as always. We'll begin by summarizing the assigned chapters. Then we'll share our first impressions and feelings about the story so far. And then finally, today, because it's the first episode of The Dog Stars, in our sci-fi analysis, we're going to be diving into the meta and learning a bit more about the author and the history of this book's publication. So all of that is coming up in just a minute. Folks, let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're cracking open a brand new book. We'll see you soon.
Welcome back, listeners. Let's begin with a brief summary of Book 1 of The Dog Stars, beginning with Chapter 1. Hig introduces the world as it now stands. Our main protagonist, 9 years after a flu pandemic, followed by a second bloodborne disease, has wiped out most of humanity. He lives at a small abandoned airport in Erie, Colorado, alongside his only neighbor, Bangley. We'll have a lot to say about him later.
Certainly.
Who is a survivalist who handles the ground defense, while Hig, meanwhile, flies reconnaissance in his 1956 Cessna, which we hear just so much about in these 6 chapters.
So much plain talk.
That's right. She's a beauty. She's really a beauty. Let's just say that. Hig's dog, Jasper, is his closest companion and his last real link to his life before the collapse. He sadly lost his wife, Melissa, to the flu. The chapter also establishes the stakes of their world directly as a group of intruders approaches at night. Hig hesitates to shoot them and waits for backup, but Bangley doesn't arrive like he usually does. In a really tense moment, just as Higgs is about to pull the trigger, Bangley finally jumps in, quickly kills the intruders, one of which is just a 9-year-old child.
Oh my gosh.
No hesitation on Bangley's part.
Zero hesitation. And in fact, this was just a test for Higgs. Bangley was there the whole time watching, waiting to see what Higgs would do.
That's right. Bit of a peek into both of their minds at this moment.
That's right. Okay, chapter 2 is quite a bit shorter than chapter 1. Chapter 1 was a chonky one, kind of setting up the world and introducing everything. Chapter 2, Higgs is reflecting on flying and how important it is to him. He talks about sort of flying over this ruined landscape that somehow contains its own beauty from so high up. It resolves into something organized and beautiful and less chaotic. And flying for him clearly has become a way to distance himself, not just from the ground, but all of the grief and violence and history and horror that has taken place on the ground. It's a way for him to escape all of that. He also recalls the story of taking Bangley up for a flight at one time when they first became neighbors early on. And this is where they discovered that nearby group of Mennonites who are living in this small community dealing with a second wave of the blood disease. Most of them are infected with this disease. So Bangley never goes up there and considers them a risk. But we learn that Hig often flies over to the community with supplies. He'll sometimes go and help them repair a pipe or something. He's an outdoorsman. He's a survivor. He's able to help these people who aren't able to help themselves.
Moving on to chapter 3, we find Hig describing the sniper tower that he and Bangley had built out just a few miles on the plain to cover their weakest approach. And he describes this patch of ground beneath it that's been stained by all of the people that Bangley has killed there over the years.
Crazy.
The chapter also has a bit of a kind of a repacing, a slowdown into memory. Melissa's birthday, the used books that Higgs used to give her, and the fact that Hig was never really able to bury her. Along with the other flu victims in the makeshift hospital ward, she was cremated. So he has no grave to visit. Hig also talks about fishing, which is clearly meditative and restorative for him. He still does it, even though the trout are all gone and all that's left are bottom feeders. Clearly for him, it's less about the catch than it is about touching the earth, touching something that still feels normal and grounded.
Yeah.
And part of his kind of experience of the planet.
Right. There's a huge love of nature in this book.
Definitely.
Like a core pillar, a core theme of this story is how beautiful nature is and how important it is to sometimes slow down and appreciate that.
Totally.
And Hig, personally, very attached to nature, an outdoorsman in every sense of the word.
Totally.
Okay, moving on to chapter 4. Here we get another glimpse at how Hig and Bangley are surviving out here. Hig is in the garden. He's planting for the next season for the 10th year of these two men surviving out here. Things like potatoes and stuff that he's able to grow and then keep in storage and use for cooking. While he's working, as his mind often does, it drifts to Melissa, his wife, and we learn about the day that she died. And this was horrific. I legitimately did not see this scene coming, but at the end, she is so sick and so desperate in this makeshift hospital that all of these people are dying in. And she essentially says the word pillow to him.
Yeah.
Directing him to end her suffering. And horrifyingly, Hig does. He takes the pillow, he places it over his wife's face, and he ends her suffering. Bangley, in his own weird way, notices that Hig is in a bad headspace. Clearly, these memories of his wife's last moments are affecting him. And so he essentially tells Hig, in not so many words, that he should take some time off. Do your thing, go up into the mountains like you like to do, get that fresh mountain air, and, go hunt a deer for us. So before the hunting trip, Hig decides to make a quick supply run to this delivery truck that he had found a few months back that is stocked with soda. You
That's
got
right.
your Dr. Peppers. You
Very
got
exciting.
your Coca-Colas. You got Sprite. I mean, leave the Sprite, whatever. But definitely grab the Dr.
Yeah.
Peppers and the Coke. So he goes out there. He's like, I'll get me and Bangley another treat. It'll last us another month. He flies out there. He lands, and things quickly go sideways. He's ambushed by these 3 men who had also discovered the truck and were grabbing some of the sodas. And there's this really tense standoff. Hig, for what it's worth, tries to talk and reason with these men, but one of them tries to shoot him with a bow and arrow. Hig is forced to kill him. The other 2 men surrender, and Hig is like, okay, fine. I'm going to take some Coke, and then you can take the rest. But get out of here. I'm not going to kill you. But one thing leads to another. One of the men, for some dumbass reason, antagonizes Hig, the man pointing a gun at his face.
So unnecessary.
And this triggers Hig enough to shoot that man as well.
Yeah.
So now 2 of them are dead. The last man, in a total panic, just runs away off into the woods. One of the dying men, though, had cryptically warned Hig that a group that he calls the Arabs are coming, and they're on the way, and that Hig is a dead man. Fuck you, motherfucker. The Arabs are going to get you.
That's right.
And we'll just have to wait and see what that means.
Yeah, even in the end times, it's the brown people you got to watch out
The brown
for.
people are coming, folks. They're
brown
coming for
people
your
are
jobs. At this point, they're coming for your Senate seats. Am I right? El Sayed in Michigan, you know?
That's right. Hey, there we go. Well, the last 2 chapters are a bit briefer and are a little bit of a respite of sorts. Hig makes it home with the soda that he is able to bring back on his Cessna. But he feels a bit sick over how the encounter went. And obviously, Bangley is furious
Oh
with
my
him.
God, just chews his ass out.
It's like you had 8 chances to escape
dumbass
harm and to do
motherfucker,
the
you
right
should've shot
thing. Exactly. He's like, you should have flanked them. You should have come in. You should have had a clear line of sight. There was just a litany of things that he points out that Hig had completely failed to do. And of course, he walks away without touching any of the sodas that Hig had presumably brought, really for him.
I found this chapter 5 is really short. It's mostly just Bangley yelling at Hig for being a dumbass and almost getting himself killed out there. But I found it really revealing. I think it tells us quite a bit about Bangley.
Right.
I was quite impressed by how tactical Bangley is.
Yeah.
You should have approached from this side, and the
Right.
minute you gave him this second to
Right.
attack you is the minute you should have used to blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
Right.
And I was like, damn, this guy isn't like a dumb, like, hick. I don't know, like some gun-toting idiot
Totally,
that I
yeah.
thought he was at the start of the book.
Yeah.
He's actually extremely strategic.
For sure.
And has this like very tactical, probably military. He's probably ex-military. We know nothing about his backstory in the story so far in these first 6 chapters.
Yeah.
He refuses to open up to Hig at all.
Totally.
Hig has never, in the 9 years they've been living together, Hig has never gotten anything out of him.
Right.
But I thought this chapter is very telling. I think it reveals some more of Bangley's mind. And it also, in almost like a father-like way, reveals to us that Bangley legitimately concerned about Hig
For sure.
and would legitimately be sad, and not in just a tactical way, I think, but in like a personal, emotional way,
Right.
would be sad if Hig got himself killed out there.
Yeah.
So this to me read like dad is yelling at you, not because he's necessarily even mad at you, but because he's scared that you almost got hurt and he didn't want you to get hurt.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's clear, on the other hand, that this same kind of level of compassion and care and interest does not extend to Jasper. Let's just say.
Look, I know I'm out here sounding like I'm defending Bangley, but Bangley has multiple times threatened to kill Jasper, and that to me is a no-go.
Yeah, exactly.
Unforgivable.
That's a burning red line over here at
That's
at
right.
the Sci-Fi Book Club Pod Studios.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, in any case, Bangley is furious, and he's also mad because this kind of last, remaining figure from the trio that attacked Hig also had some information that could have been useful to them. There's actually,
Yes.
here they are kind of camped out for a decade, nearly, and largely without kind of really strong, effective, organized threats to them, just little kind of groups and excursions coming in. And for the first time, it seems like there might be an organized threat, and they've lost all chances of getting more information. So his anger is also justifiable.
Totally.
And then just wrapping up our summary here in the final chapter, we see Hig and Jasper actually set out for the mountains, and they have what appears to be honestly a pretty idyllic time. It's a great couple of days. They've got their familiar campsite, fish that they're catching and cooking over an open flame. They're sleeping under the stars, under a tarp. Honestly, this is everything that, a survivalist man could hope for. And
Right.
I don't relate to it per se, but I get it. Like, this sounds
Same. I get it.
quite lovely. If this is your, if the earth is your, forested plains are your thing. I don't even know how to talk about this stuff. So, I'm trying to grasp for a language that I just do not
tell
have.
us you've never gone camping without telling us you've never gone camping.
Exactly. The leaves must be nice. I don't know.
Yep.
But we should stop laughing. This is actually a very sad chapter.
Yeah, this is tragic. This ends tragically.
This ends pretty tragically as, following all of this, Hig wakes up to find that Jasper, his beloved dog, is cold and not responsive, and he soon realizes has died in his sleep. And that closes book 1 of the Dog Stars.
That's right. So, first 6 chapters, roughly the first half of the book. How are we feeling? How do you feel about the book so far? We had some original texts when I think we both started.
Yeah. Yeah.
where I think we both expressed doubts on whether we would like this book.
Yes.
But I think 6 chapters in, I'm feeling a little bit different. But I want to hear from you first. How are you feeling 6 chapters in?
Yeah, and that's the right framing. I think a couple pages in, maybe a chapter in, I truthfully was finding that it was going somewhat slowly for me. This wasn't exactly a page turner for me.
Same.
I think we both gave a listen to the audiobook, and let's just say it's not the most sprightly listen. So,
no.
You might have some more thoughts on that. But yeah, altogether for me, it just coming out of the gate, this wasn't super gripping for me. And as we've kind of alluded to, at least I am not a super outdoorsy person. I enjoy the outdoors. I like hikes. I go hunting approximately never, But all that said, Peter Heller, I think,
and to be clear, like day hikes that
that's right.
And back at the car, and we go to a diner and eat pancakes.
Yes,
that's the hike.
That's right. We have about 2,000 calories worth of pancakes. I go through half a bottle to a full bottle of syrup, and you call it a day. And then you're back at home, and you're watching, the latest episode of The Sopranos. I don't know. So in any case, I do think that Peter Heller is clearly skilled, is a very skilled author and writer, and he paints a really kind of beautiful picture of this world. And obviously it's post-apocalyptic, but we enjoy and can appreciate, I think a lot of the natural world that he is presenting here. It's also a book that I think somebody like my brother might enjoy. We'll talk more about Peter Heller's background, but much like Peter Heller, my brother lived in Colorado, spent a lot of time enjoying the outdoors, kind of skiing and camping, tubing, all that kind of stuff. He even has a dog that sounds a bit like Jasper, or what Jasper could be. I'm not sure if we're given info on his breed, but my brother's got this kind of German Shepherd mix that is ready for the apocalypse, it feels like.
Nice.
But I think just truthfully for me, it's maybe too grounded, I guess. I'm typically more attracted to wispy ideas and kind of abstract, notions that are hard to pin down and that you could kind of debate endlessly without necessarily reaching a conclusion. And I think so far in this book, I haven't necessarily found anything super meaty that I find myself like pondering on days later, I guess. So all that said, I'm enjoying the book as like a kind of fun adventure story. And there's definitely some emotional arcs that are worthwhile here that don't feel like hollow or simplistic, but not, just kind of coming out the gate, not a page turner for me.
Yeah.
How's it sitting with you?
I generally agree, but I think I am finding myself enjoying it more and more as the chapters go on. In chapter 1, I was very much not sold on this book, to be clear.
Yeah.
I was texting you and I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a like weird macho gun-toting man with his dog, dead wife. Like it hits a lot of cliches, right?
Totally.
For like a book for men.
Right.
And I was like, damn, I'm just not the target audience for this, I think. Like I'm not finding any of this enjoyable outside of Jasper. And the first chapter for me was tough to settle into. I think it also doesn't help that in addition to the audiobook being like painfully slow, the narrator talks really slowly. I was listening at like up to 2x speed.
Yeah.
Either way, the audiobook was tough to get into. So then I switched and then I was like, okay, let me buy the Kindle and let me read it. I retain information better. I'm a visual learner, so I retain better when I read anyway. And so I started reading the book, and the book is hard to kind of read too, because Peter Heller, like, I don't know, I'm not familiar with his other stories, but in this one in particular, it's clearly framed as Hig is recalling the story of his like life to you. And because Hig is sort of like a simple man, there's like no punctuation in the whole book. And it's just like a string of run-on sentences.
Oh, fascinating.
Sort of like stream of consciousness from Hig.
Okay. And
so it takes some getting used to. You have to like retrain your brain to be like, okay, I got to think like Hig does.
You know what? It's really interesting to hear that. And I'm mainly listening to the audiobook, not reading the actual text this time around. And I know that one of Peter Heller's kind of literary inspirations is Ernest Hemingway, like from his youth. And Hemingway does a lot with kind of, playing with language in his writing, like really brief sentences, like longer ones, kind of like playing with the music of language. Yes. And so I can see then why he would be, I guess where this style might be inspired from.
Yeah. And, and I'm painting that as like a negative, but I actually don't think it's a negative. Once I got over the hurdle of reading it that way, I began to really appreciate that the book was like really committing to the structure of this is Hig. This is Hig's story. We're inside Hig's head.
Right. And
Hig is speaking in the way that Hig should speak. Right. And so this book is written in his voice, his style. It's like random run-on sentences. He repeats circular thoughts. And I found that Hig is, once I could frame the reading that way, I found Hig to be quite a deep character. I began to appreciate him more than my initial impressions, which was, this is just some like manly man who loves his dog and is sad about his wife and loves guns. Right. And I was like, oh, he's actually quite poetic. Like the way he talks about flying, I thought was really beautiful, and what it means to him. The memories he has of his wife, at first I thought were a bit cliche, but then got like sort of darker and more meaningful as we learned more about it. And ultimately, I think some of the themes of the book, while fairly straightforward, are resonating with me in a special way, because it goes more than skin deep. This isn't just like a generic version of The Road, which I'm sure many folks have made comparisons to. This isn't some like generic repackaging of I Am Legend, a man and his dog, last people alive, blah, blah, blah. There is a lot of depth here that I'm appreciating. Yeah. So ultimately, I'll say I'm having a good time with the book. I'm not yet having a great time. It's very slow paced.
Yeah.
Like you, I am certainly not an outdoorsy person, so a lot of the nature talk is sort of lost on me. I can appreciate the beauty. I can appreciate how much it means to Hig, but it means not very much to me. So it's hard to empathize.
For sure.
So I guess to wrap up my thoughts, currently I'm squarely in the middle. I'm not disliking the book. I'm not loving the book, but I'm liking it. I'm having a good time, and it's quite short, and I'm excited to see what the back half has in store for us, because I think we have hit essentially a turning point in Hig's life. He has lost Jasper, and I was telling you this before we started recording. I think narratively, this sort of signals the loss of his last and final connection to his life before. And thus maybe the loss of Hig's humanity, maybe. I think we're going to see a changed Hig in the back half of the book, and I'm interested to see what that evolution looks like.
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing that thread, play out over the course of the rest of the novel.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on Bangley as a character, as a companion, as a narrative device, like in all aspects, because he's quite divisive.
No, Bangley is interesting. There are a couple of times when Hig, whether talking to himself or kind of recollecting previous conversations with Bangley, makes it clear that Bangley seems to be okay with the possibility of being entirely on his own. And that Hig is really, is primarily instrumentally useful to him. It's not his intrinsic humanity that Bangley, I think, is attracted to or needs. It's really the fact that, well, Hig can fly a plane. He can go secure additional resources.
He can cook. He can farm.
And so that he has a lot of useful kind of attributes and skills that make him a valuable companion for Bangley. And I don't really, I guess, fault him for that really kind of brutalist, minimal outlook, I guess, on his few remaining companions on the planet. But on the other hand, I guess I can understand that survival, it's such a primitive core instinct that survival alone can keep us going. But I personally have a hard time really fathoming the value, of a world with just me. Like I don't know quite what I'm fighting for, I guess, at that point. And so, Bangley's kind of outlook, I guess, to me is a little just quizzical. Like, it's a little puzzling, because I don't know what exactly is his, outside of just base survival, what is it that he is living for? And that to me is kind of the open question around Bangley. And maybe the rest of the book will shed some light on that. Maybe it won't. But I guess that's my general take on Bangley. He's a bit of a question mark. His like kind of general, survive at all costs attitude makes sense to me, but to what end is kind of where I'm left.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, actually. Like, what's the point of surviving?
Yeah.
Beyond surviving is essentially, from my understanding so far, the central theme of this book.
Yeah.
Hig himself is often wondering this, right? Like, going out and getting the Coke is like a little treatsy for him and Bangley. And perhaps another reason to make it another month, right? Next month, I'll go out and get some more Coke for us, and we'll get to enjoy another Coke. And maybe taking it sort of month to month as he figures out, like, why he's still here. What's the point of all of this? And there's this sort of, like, slow philosophical meandering, I think, in this book about just, like, the purpose of life.
Right.
And I think Bangley intentionally is like, we don't know. We're inside Hig's head, and so we get a sense like, okay, there's some of the small things are keeping him going. His connection to nature, his memories are what can maybe make his day-to-day bearable. I really liked the detail, for example, that he talks to Jasper a lot.
Yeah.
Just like is up in the plane, just constantly yapping.
Right. Like, that's why he has that specific plane, because there's a seat next to him.
Yes, exactly. Right? He doesn't go with one of the nicer, newer, faster planes that are all available at the airport. Right. He uses this one because there's a side seat and Jasper can be there with him and they can yap.
Right.
And I think those little hints are really instrumental in explaining why Hig continues to do what he does, what makes him tick.
Totally.
Bangley, I think, is a really interesting question mark because he's so reclusive, because he's so cold-blooded, because he's a killer. Why is Bangley still alive? Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that Hig's current theory is Bangley just likes proving that he can survive. Yeah. And like, is that a good enough reason to survive, to prove that you can? Maybe for Bangley it is. Maybe he doesn't need anything else in life except to prove that he can live better than or survive better than anyone else. I don't know. So I think there's some interesting questions being asked by the book. And I'm interested to see where this back half will take us and whether we'll get more answers to those questions or whether we'll complicate them, right? Like now that Jasper's gone, is that one less reason Hig has to like keep going? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Well, those are our feelings about the book so far. That is the first 6 chapters, a pretty interesting read that I think we're both excited to see where it lands in the back half. Let's take a quick break. Folks, stick around, though, because when we come back, we're going to do what we always do when we crack open a new book. We're going to dig into our meta. We're going to learn all about Peter Heller, the author, and all about the publication history of this book. So stick around. That's coming up after the break. We'll see you soon. Welcome back, folks. All right, let's get into our meta and learn a bit more about the Dog Stars and Peter Heller, its author.
To begin with, we learned that Peter Heller grew up in Brooklyn Heights in a family that loved languages. His father was an advertising writer and playwright who read him poetry, and Hemingway's stories gave Heller the first sense in life that prose could hit you physically rather than just intellectually. I found a pretty interesting anecdote about his father, actually, who would come up with these slogans and pitches for brands that he worked with as a marketing and advertising writer. And he'd essentially come up with these slogans the first day of the campaigns, but then he would take the next 3 or 4 days writing worse copies of the pitches just so that he could demonstrate that he had to work hard at it, basically. And so he was very inventive with language, a really punny man, you know.
I love that.
And so it's clear that Peter Heller's, love for language came from his family, really. Mm-hmm. And Heller also enjoyed kind of a really adventurous life. At Dartmouth, he discovered kayaking and eventually became a Class 5 paddler and wilderness rescue instructor. Peter Heller's writing career began when he cold called Outside Magazine and persuaded an editor there to send him on a dangerous expedition in Tibet. That trip ended in tragedy, but Heller's account of it was nominated for a National Magazine Award and essentially launched a long career writing about remote rivers, surfing, conservation, and other wilderness adventures. He was a longtime NPR contributor, contributing editor at Outside, Men's Journal, National Geographic Adventure. He was a regular contributor to Bloomberg Businessweek, so definitely wrote a lot for kind of a wide variety of publications.
With a focus on like outdoorsiness.
That's right. Yeah, totally.
And like kayaking and wilderness survival.
Yeah. Definitely like a nature writer, kind of first and foremost. And a lot of the texture in this book directly comes from that life. Heller built an off-grid cabin in Colorado. He learned to hunt and fly fish, earned a bush pilot's license, and bought his own 1956 Cessna 182.
Hey!
The same year and model that Hig flies in this novel.
Yeah. Wow. Now, when Heller turned 50, he realized that despite his success in nonfiction writing and reporting, he still had not written any kind of fiction, the kind of fiction that he had admired as a kid and had dreamed about writing.
Right.
So when he finally sat down to try and take this new venture into fiction writing, he says that Hig's voice arrived as though Hig were sitting right across from him at a campfire, simply telling him what had happened, which, as we talked about earlier with the way this book is written, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So Heller followed that voice and wrote his debut novel, the very novel we are talking about today, The Dog Stars. In just a few very intense months of writing, the novel was published in 2012 when Peter Heller was 53 years old, and it became his breakout success. It became a New York Times bestseller. It was the iTunes Apple Books Novel of the Year that year, and it has now been translated into 22 languages. And in 2013, The Dog Stars was even shortlisted for the Arthur C. Clarke Award, which is the highest honor for science fiction literature in the UK.
In terms of reviews and reception, we found nearly everybody reaches for Cormac McCarthy's The Road as a reference point, which makes
as we did
sense,
today.
as we did today. But a lot of people note how differently Heller plays the same setup. NPR called it a dark, poetic, and funny novel and flagged the thing that seems to unsettle a lot of people in a good way is that the destruction of civilization appears to have given Hig the chance to live more richly in the present, not less. Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Really connect with nature and slow down in a way he couldn't in his past life, and that we certainly can't in 2026.
Precisely. Clearly, Bangley is thriving in this post-apocalyptic world. Despite not necessarily having quite the same affinity.
I want to meet Bangley in post-apocalypse, you know?
Right,
like, was he just suffering? Was he just having the worst life ever?
Right. He was just like working in a McDonald's drive-thru and just scheming about the world when he could get out of his bunker or get into his bunker, I guess.
Totally. Oh, he for sure had a bunker.
Extreme prepper vibes, let's just say.
Oh, yeah.
Other writers and reviewers, including Gillian Flynn, writer of Gone Girl, of course, described it as, quote, a dreamy post-apocalyptic love letter to things of beauty, big and small, a twitching trout, a can of Sprite, empathy, sex, decency, and a good dog, end quote. Critics aren't necessarily so divided. I think this book was generally pretty well received.
Yeah, it was pretty well received. And I liked in particular, this resonated with me in Publishers Weekly. The review called it, quote, perhaps the world's most poetic survival guide, end quote. And I find that to be true. You know, this to me elevates above your generic run-of-the-mill post-apocalyptic man and his dog story by injecting that extra layer of poetry.
Right.
Hig's observations of the world around him, Hig's memories of his wife, Hig's love of nature. That adds a special layer of sort of poetic observation and poetic language that this book would have suffered, I think, without. It's what stands out to me as special in this book.
Totally agreed.
Now, why are we talking about it? This does feel a little bit outside of our style of sci-fi that we like, you know? Like, we cover sort of these high concept sci-fi stories, other planets, ships traveling, AI, high concept stuff. But this is sort of your grounded post-apocalyptic, couple of years in the future pandemic story.
Right.
But we're covering it because, well, frankly, there's a movie coming out. And it's just smart for us to cover something when there's a big adaptation coming out. In November of 2024, Deadline broke the news that Ridley Scott, Ridley Scott, would be directing an adaptation for 20th Century Fox, written by Mark L. Smith, who also wrote The Revenant, which makes a lot of sense. And Paul Mescal at the time was attached to the product, presumably as Hig, maybe?
Probably.
But eventually, casting shifted around, maybe because of schedules, and the film began shooting in April of 2025, and the cast is now Jacob Elordi, who is playing Hig, Josh Brolin, who plays Bangley, Margaret Qualley, Allison Janney, and Guy Pearce, who play future characters that we haven't met yet in the story. And the movie is going to be coming out in just a few weeks on August 28th, 2026. And you and I will try to get out to the theater, and see the movie. And of course, we'll record a little bonus episode and share our thoughts on it once we get a chance to see the movie.
That's right. Exciting stuff.
Exciting stuff. All right, folks. That does it for today. That wraps it up for today's episode of Science Fiction Book Club. We have homework for you. As always, there's more reading to be done for our next episode. Make sure that you finish the rest of the book. Read the back half of The Dog Stars by Peter Heller. Complete the book so that you can join us for our next episode and our next conversation. And of course, a reminder that if you're ever wondering what books we're reading, when chapters have to be read by, what's going on, where are we, who are you, all of those questions are answered on our website, which is always linked in the show notes below. So please check that out. Our website is where you can find our entire reading schedule, all the books we have read in previous seasons, and all the books we will be reading in the months to come. So bookmark that page. It's always up to date. That's a great way to keep up with the show and keep up with the reading.
Well, friends, civilization may have collapsed, the trout may all be gone, and Bangley may be watching us through a nightscope, but somehow Apple Podcasts is still accepting reviews, so please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, 5-star reviews are the only visitors Bangley allows inside the perimeter.
If you gave us this is not a threat, this is legally not a threat. If you gave us a 4-star review, you better watch your ass.
That's a legal promise.